Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to week 38 of xEssentials. Tonight's presentation, we're very privileged to have Tom BetGeorge on how to create an epic video of your display. If you wouldn't mind, you can put questions in the chat or save them for the end, and we'll allow you to unmute yourself and ask away. So Tom, you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you. So really, I'm not teaching you how to make an epic video of your display. In all reality, I'm just teaching you how the tricks that I like. So a little bit about myself. My name is Tom. Okay. Class topic is going to be, I'm going to go over camera techniques for recording a display. After that, I'm actually going to show you how to edit the video just a little bit using Final Cut Pro. Whether you not use Final Cut Pro, don't even worry about it. That's just a program I use. I'm going to teach you tricks that work beyond the scope of a particular program. So just in case you want to see the type of video that I'm going to show you what I did, what I'm going to show is this one right here. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that quick little clip. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. You guys can still see here. So basically, that's the kind of feel I'm going for. Don't pay attention to the sound quality, of course. Play from the current side. Okay, so by the way, I can give this PowerPoint to anyone who wants it after. The real basic thing I know this is common sense, but I'm going to say it anyhow. You need good content plus a good recording plus good editing to make a good video. If you don't have good content, no matter how good your video is, it's not going to make it look good. So I know it sounds like common sense, but I'm still going to just clarify, please don't spend forever on a video if you're not spending forever on the content itself. Also, my general philosophy is if you feel like it's good enough, it's not. The fact that you have to say that means there's already things about it that bother you. Don't even bother thinking about it. Just fix it before you forget about it. Half the time, by the time you just think about it, you could have just fixed it the same amount of time. All right, done with the philosophy part of it. First of all, there's a few basic options. You can use a camcorder, which is the most common type of camera in the past, aside from broadcast. Basically, on a typical camcorder, the lens is not detachable unless you're using like broadcast quality, and then those lenses are detachable, but those lenses could be like $30,000, which is going to be outside the budget. Probably for most people in this class. Most of us will probably use this, which is it should be DSLR. I put DLSR, sorry, or mirrorless body and camera. That's what I use. I don't know if you still see my video. I'm just going to assume you do. This is a Sony A7S Mark II. The Mark II is very, very important. Basically, you can do 4K. Immediately on the camera, and the coolest thing about it is the high ISO. I'm going to talk about what that means later. So basically, when you have a mirrorless or a DSLR, you have a full frame and a crop sensor. So what you see is not necessarily what you get when you have something called a crop sensor. Most of the cheaper DSLRs are mirrorless bodies. You're going to see only what's inside the red box versus everything you see in a full frame. So if you have the money, the difference between a full frame and a crop sensor is definitely worth it, but skill is actually more important than the full frame versus a crop sensor. You can still get away with a crop sensor, it's just you see a lot more on a full frame. Also, the if it's a full frame, that also means you let in more light. We'll talk about why that's more important later. Of course, there's HD versus 4K. I don't necessarily even recommend uploading a video in 4K, but if you record in 4K, you can zoom in 4 times and still be at HD quality. If you're familiar with 4K, it's basically literally twice the resolution wide, twice the resolution tall, which means it's 4 times in total. So if you zoom in 4 times, you still have just as good quality as HD. This is really, really important in post-production. The lenses are just as critical as the body. In other words, you can't just get a really great camera and a mediocre lens. If anything, the lens is more important than the body. So if you have I've seen terrible old cameras with really good lens, or people call it glass, and you'll get incredible stuff even compared to your brand new 40 megapixel camera. So there's a couple types of lenses I'm going to go over. There's a prime lens. By the way, can someone say yes if you can still see the video, and that way I can show my camera? Okay, good. So this is a prime lens. A prime lens basically only has focus on it. So in other words, this giant thing is only doing focus. It is not doing the actual zooming in. A prime lens is super cool because they usually have lower f-stops. I'll tell you what an f-stop is later. Or there's a zoom lens. So prime lens means you can't zoom. Whatever it is, like you literally have to move the camera to zoom in or to zoom out. A zoom lens, you know what a zoom lens is. You actually adjust the camera lens to make it go in or go out. Anything under 28 millimeters is going to be what you would consider a wide angle, or like a fish eye. I'll show you what that looks like later. They're always measured in millimeters. It has to do with the focal length. You don't have to know what that even means, but 35 millimeters is standard. You probably heard things like 35 millimeters. That's typically what you imagine a camera would do. 50 millimeters would be like a little more zoomed in, whereas let's say 200 millimeters is like super zoom, like it's like telescopic in nature. And of course, there's also the smartphones. Before we started officially, I mentioned casually, actually a lot of the new iPhones and Samsungs, they're actually pretty good cameras. Truth be told, I have an iPhone 8. It's pretty dang good. And the iPhone 10, very, very similar, are the new Galaxies. So truth be told, if you just want to use your iPhone, you're probably not going to get a terrible video. I shouldn't even say that. You'll probably can make it a pretty good video. But if you get, of course, a DSLR or a mirrorless body, that's not like a $200 camera. We're talking about probably like $1,000 and up. You're going to get a substantially better camera. There's no making up for the lens. No matter how good your iPhone is, if the lens is this small and it's letting in this much light, it's not going to compare to a lens this big and letting in that much light. The more light you let into the lens, the less noise you have. We'll talk about that later. Google Pixel 2 is also a good camera. So we talked about the focal length examples. So this is all the same picture. So 18 millimeter, I mean, it's like you see really, really wide, right? 24 millimeter, still wide angle, but just ever so slightly on the edges. You can't really see in this picture, but typically an 18 millimeter would actually have more of a fish eye lens. 35 millimeters is pretty typical. 55, you can see it's zoomed in, 85, etc. If you look at 300 millimeters, that little red barn is huge in the last picture, whereas compared to the first one, you can see it's actually a very telescopic lens. That's something they would use, like I don't know, like at a sports game or something, using very, very fast shutter speed. We'll get into that later. Your editing gear, of course, you need a computer. Most computers are honestly fine for HD editing. If you want to go 4K, however, you need an extremely fast processor. I'm a Mac guy, so I would need an iMac Pro or faster, which is typically a $5,000 computer and up. So for most of you, that's fine. Don't even worry about it. Most people don't even have 4K TVs, and even if they do, they still don't have the signal for it. Same with monitors and phones. Most people, truth be told, watch videos on their phones. They don't even watch it on their computers anymore. You need at least 32 gigabytes of RAM and a very good video card or external processor. For example, Blackmagic makes a great processor, and at least a 5K monitor, because the video itself is 4K, so you need to be able to see your menu and other things while you're watching. Also a solid state drive. In other words, not a slow hard drive, but something that's made of the same stuff like a flash drive. By using solid state, you can access and record that information way faster. If you can technically edit a 4K video, and I've done it on my computer prior, and I would click something and it would render for 15, 20 minutes. I would go do laundry. I would click something else. I would cook a meal. I would click something else. I would eat the meal, I would, and so forth. You click one more time. I would start a cigarette habit, quit a smoking habit, and all in the same amount of time of just literally clicking one thing. It's not worth it. So if you don't have a super fast computer, don't bother with 4K. Just do it HD. There's free software for video editing. It's called DaVinci Resolve. It's not bad at all. You can use iMovie if you're on a Mac, or if you don't mind using a budget. DaVinci Resolve has a paid version. There's Final Cut Pro, Adobe Premiere. All these are great software programs. I could easily stand by any three of these, and you'll be totally, totally happy. Unless you're doing an actual film, these will do fine. Actually, truth be told, few films are actually made on these software programs that you've seen in the movies. Moving on. So here's a little bit of an example of a typical video production process. First, you need to plan your shots. Please don't just go out there and start videotaping. Usually when I'm programming a sequence, I actually already know ahead of time what I'm going to film, and I already know where the camera is going to be. If you don't have that plan, you'll probably be suffering during the filming process. So please plan your shots ahead of time. Then, of course, you do your recording, import to your computer. Then typically you re-record because you find out everything was out of focus because you were cold and you didn't spend that much time focusing in. By the way, when you focus on your camera, please zoom in like 10 to 20 times to make sure it truly is in focus. Do not leave it on automatic focus. Then you re-import it to the computer. Then you do your initial editing and color grading. We'll talk about that later. Then you cry in a fetal position from crippling self-doubt, final editing, sharing on social media, your rage from a single thumbs down on YouTube, receiving $1.13 from YouTube, and then feeling on top of the world. Again, this is just your typical process. When it comes to planning your shots, I typically like to have at least one wide-angle shot that I can, just see everything. In other words, I want to see all of the display all at once. For some of you who have a lot of land, this might be kind of hard to do. You might have to use a drone shot or something like that. You know your situation. But basically, you want to be as close as possible while having all your elements in one shot. You also want to have a shot from your distance. It's great to have that distance shot so you can do like slow zoom ins and outs using a Ken Burns effect. We'll talk about that later. A shot from an angle. So, for example, if you have everything straight on, pick either your right side or your left side, just to give a little bit of variety. Also, definitely don't forget to have close-ups of your important or featured elements. So, for example, if you have this really cool prop and at one point it's doing something really cool, please, at least during that time, have a close-up of it. And then go to moving shots finally at the end. These are less critical, but these can be kind of fun to create some spatial dimensions when people are watching. If you're going to do moving shots, use something called a gimbal. That's the thing that keeps it stable. Like drones, they usually have that built in. I think it's that camera called Oso or something like that. They have these really cool handheld ones, and they work extremely well. Some of them are as cheap as $35. Some are for a few $100. But if you're going to do a moving shot, you need the gimbal. Trust me, any type of shaking is going to be obvious, and trying to get rid of shaking in post-production is also clearly obvious. It's not a good thing. And if you want, you can even have a crowd shot. This year, I'm planning on including the crowd in the actual video itself. This is assuming you have a crowd, and I'm not trying to be smart. It just means in my display, I don't do a drive. We don't use FM transmitters because there's too many people. So we actually just close off the road every night that we have a show, and we just run off real speakers. So there's always an audience. So that can add some of the energy. And during the recording process, I want to talk about some basic things on your camera. Your aperture. Aperture is measured in f-stop, and it determines your depth of field. So basically, if your aperture is totally open, it means like your lens allows you to see, I'm sorry, let me say that again. Your lens is wide open, it lets in more light. The lower the f-stop number, the more light it is. It's kind of confusing because it's an inverse relationship. So for example, 1.4 might be the lowest f-stop you'll typically see. 1.4 is a lot of light. Typically a camera on an iPhone or something similar would have an f-stop around 4.0-ish, and that's going to let in a lot less light. the lower you have an f-stop, that means your depth of field is smaller. So in other words, let's say you see those cool photos like of a portrait of a person, and in that photo, you see just a person in focus and everything else is out of focus. What that is it's a low f-stop, which means it has a shallow depth of field. So you determine what that depth of field is by your focus, and everything else becomes blurry. This is a very desirable effect in photos. In your display, it's probably not what you're going for. I mean, of course, it's subjective, but if you have some things that are out of focus and some things that are in focus, it probably means your f-stop is too low if that's not what you're going for. Try increasing your f-stop or your aperture setting. Here we go. I forgot I have this. So keep in mind, you have to raise up your ISO, which is sensitivity to light, to keep these images look the same. Otherwise, the f-stop 22, normally if the ISO settings were all the same, this would be much darker, and the f1.8 would be much brighter. But they've already compensated in these 4 images. If you see the f22, you'll notice everything's in focus. Look at the f8, you can see that lens in the front is a little bit out of focus. f4, the first 2 lenses are out of focus. And then f1.8, really just that middle lens is in focus. Of course, you adjust your focus. And everything else is out of focus. That would be typical of the lower f-stop, which means also a more shallow depth of field, but it also means more light. ISO is basically your camera's sensitivity to light. So the higher is brighter, but it's also typically noisier. In other words, this happens a lot in problems of video of displays. You'll notice if you look at a video and you see noise all around the edges, it's because the ISO was probably too high for that camera's capability. This is why having a good camera, this is where a good camera really shines. This is going to be happening from the body itself or the lens if you can have a lower f-stop. But the problem is if you get too low, things get out of focus. So typically the best solution I found is having a camera that has very good sensitivity to light. That's through an ISO. The camera I use, again, the Sony. Oh, I got a question. What is noise? Okay, noise. Let's see here. YouTube Christmas lights video. Okay. I'm just going to go to anything I see. I'm looking for noise. This is a cool video. I remember watching it. So this is nothing against the video itself. Sorry for the ad. I don't control this.
You'll spend 15 minutes with your grandma.
Good video. But you can see it looks like all darkness. So this is not a good example of noise because they actually dropped it. We look for a bright video. Ah, man, I'm sorry. And here's my own video. I feel more comfortable ripping on my own video. It's hard to see in this. Let me get to, if you see like all around this green, it's not clear. That's noise. All that pixelation where you can actually see the pixels, that's noise. You might have seen videos that look much worse. I'm a little scared of finding a video than ripping on it because that's inappropriate. But if you look, for example, I'll go back to my video that's recent. Recent files. You'll notice there's no noise. In other words, even though it's dark, it's like super clear. And I'm not trying to give myself props. I'm just trying to show what I mean. So, like if you look all around, it's very hard to see any artifacts or pixels. You can see a little bit right there where there's no light. But that's because this camera has extremely good sensitivity to light. The ISO on my camera goes to 400 and something thousand ISO. A typical camera, like a Canon Mark, what's it? A Canon Mark, Mark 5, something like that, whatever it is, or Canon 5D, Mark 2, Mark 3, whatever it is, which is a fantastic camera. I think the ISO only goes like 20, 30, 40,000. whereas the Sony A7S Mark II goes to 400,000 ISO, which means, yes, it's literally 10 times more sensitive than another camera that's $3,000. So if you want really good sensitivity to light, I don't make any money by pushing Sony. I'm just letting you know their Sony A7S Mark II. I think they have a Mark III now. It's actually incredible for that. Also, of course, the white balance. Your white balance sets basically what your camera thinks is white. If you mess up in this, it's fine as long as your white balance is the same for all shots. That way you can fix it in post-production. If you use a different white balance setting, it's going to be a problem. I'm not going to spend time on white balance because it's less important, although still important. I think most of you guys can figure that out on your own. File type, there's 4K HD. There's also your FPS or frames per second. When you watch a typical old movie, that'd be like 24 frames per second. It has like this nostalgia feel to it because it's actually slower than most of the videos you see. 30 frames per second, or more technically 29.97. There's reasons for that number. I'm not going to get into it. Is it typical speed? Or 60 frames per second? The video, you probably don't have enough streaming to see it, but the video I showed you, that 1 minute video, is actually at 60 frames per second. So if you watch it online when you're bored, you'll see it looks super, super smooth because there is 2 frames per second, or 2 pictures, if you will, per second, which really makes it look a lot more liquid, especially because on that sequence, there's so much stuff going on. When I had it only 30 frames per second, there was too many things getting missed. There's raw, as far as file type, you have a raw file type. Raw means you have all the data, but it's a massive file. For most of you, it's probably not needed. A movie is a good format. MP4 is not bad. AVCHD is more proprietary. They're all good file types. I wouldn't spend too much time on that, but the smaller the file size, the less quality it is. If you can do raw, please do it. If it's too big, use like an MP4, which is basically like an MP3, but a video form. As I mentioned earlier with focus, please, for the love of God, make sure you get your camera off autofocus. It might be labeled AFC, autofocus continuous. You don't want anything autofocus. You want manual focus. Set it once, zoom in while you do it, and then, or you can cheat for a second, like go to autofocus, focus your camera, and then immediately turn it off autofocus. Otherwise, when you're videotaping lights, your camera doesn't know how to interpret light. It doesn't go in and out nonstop. It's going to frustrate you like crazy. With your initial editing, start with your main shot as your default. Since we have time and I'm on my own computer, I'm going to show you what that looks like. Typically, you want to make your cuts every 2 to 7 seconds. In other words, change scenes. When you go longer than that, most people don't have the attention span to do that. So please, after 2 to 7 seconds, if you find you're bored, you waited too long. A little before you're bored is when you want to change. People like you and I, that we would call light enthusiasts, we like to see long shots, but the average person doesn't. They have very short attention spans. In fact, if you don't wow them in the first like half to 3 seconds that they're on their phone, they're probably not even going to watch your video if that's a concern for you. If this is just for your own reference, well, it doesn't really matter. The average audience has shorter attention spans. For those of you who have seen a class I've taught before, it's typically understood that the average person's attention span is about 9 seconds. In other words, anything beyond 9 seconds, the average person fades away. Of course, your timing between your scene changes should make sense musically. It should not feel awkward. I'll show you a little bit of that later. Color grading is when you adjust the light, hue, saturation, and more things in post-production. I usually oversaturate the color just a little bit. In other words, I go to my saturation part, setting, and I raise it a little bit more than normal on purpose, because when you watch lights in person, there's this magical, overwhelming feeling you get. When you look at a typical video, it just doesn't look overwhelming anymore. You notice how like that green glows a little bit? I did that. I did it because that's what it looks like when you see it in person, but when you watch it, like if you like to use a typical recording, which we just watched this one, and this is this Kevin Jones. He's a great programmer. So this is nothing against his stuff by any means. But you'll notice if you don't oversaturate the video, if you were there in person, this would look so cool. And I know all of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. When you look in the camera, like it just looks like dots. It actually the average person might even think, is that just CGI? How do I know that's even real? It looks really underwhelming, but in person, this would be, I'm sure this tunnel, for example, is like the coolest thing in the world to drive through. So by oversaturating just a little bit, you get that magic back into the video, okay? This is my personal thing. Some of you might hate this, and that's totally fine. So I like to oversaturate just a little bit. And then finally, when you get all your color grading done, you'll do your fine-tune adjustments, and you'll crop and trim and use the Ken Burns effect. I'm only going through this quickly because we're going to talk about this in the software itself. Add fades as appropriate, add your title and credits, send a draft to someone you trust. I say this because if you send a draft to your family and friends, no matter what you do, they're going to be like, wow, that's the coolest thing ever, and you know it sucks. If you know it sucks, you're right. It does suck. So if it bothers you, fix it. And if you have people who, no matter what you send them, they say it's the greatest thing ever, those are the wrong people. Find people who actually can nitpick it. And if they go too far, that's fine. But at least if you, okay. Sorry, my wife was texting me. She's in Nashville doing some gymnastics stuff. So I just wanted to see if she's okay. Send it to someone who's going to actually nitpick. And then do your final edits, final render and export and sharing. It's really important you title it correctly. By title, I mean correctly. I mean it has to be catchy, based on an emotional response, short enough text. If you have to click read more, most people won't. So you have to usually grab them the first few seconds or first few words. I typically like Facebook and YouTube. You can make money on YouTube still. Facebook just started ads, which I know is irritating for the average person, but at least there's a revenue behind that. Also, just a short note, if you make your video good enough, chances are you'll make money off of it. There's almost not a single video I haven't made money off of. It's just continual side income. So for example, the video I just showed you that was 1 minute, I sold it to a commercial yesterday. I think the company's called Darigold. I don't even know what they are. But they're using it for a commercial they're going to do for this Christmas season. So just that extra bit of time I put into it actually literally pays off. So I do recommend spending the extra time to get a good video presentation. I mean, think about it. The average person here is probably spending at least $10,000 on their lights. Isn't it worth it just to spend a little bit of time and money to capture the moment forever? Because one day you're not going to have this display, and then the video will all you have. So it's really good to make sure you have a good video recording of it. Also, you can change your thumbnail. In other words, the little image you see before people click on your video. That's important too. Anyways, before I answer questions, let's just get in. Oh, if you need to get a hold of me, my website's magicallightshows.com and tom@magicallightshows.com. So let's go into actual editing. I'm trying to not waste anybody's time because I think time is the most important thing that everyone has. So I think the sound is going to be crappy, and I would fix it, but it's not even worth it right now because it's not a class about audio, it's a class about video. So as long as the video is cool, it should work out. This is Final Cut Pro. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. So at the very top, you can see this is my title. If I zoom in over here, you can see the title appears. This little gray boxes that fade in. And then when it gets over here, it fades out. That's something I set. As you can see, I start with my main shot. The main shot is this shot right here where I can see everything. It's zoomed in as much as possible. By zoom, I mean I actually videotaped it like this, so it's not technically zoomed. This is what the shot looks like. And then it looks like 6 seconds in, I'm bored, so I actually switched to a different shot. Now, if you look at this shot, you're going to see movement. I'm going to play it for you. That movement was not done in person and not in real life. It was done in post-production using something called a Ken Burns effect. So for example, if I click over here, every program has this. So don't feel like you have to have a certain program. Even iMovie has this, which is a free program. If you click on it, every software program is going to look a little bit different, but this is going to be similar. And you go to your transform or crop settings, you'll see Ken Burns is an option. And what Ken Burns means is you pick a start. If you look this window right here, that's my start. Red is end, which means it starts at the full screen. And then I determine by messing around with this how big I want the end to be. So ever so slowly during these few seconds, it actually zooms in. So for example, if you're watching like a soap opera and all of a sudden they're saying something really, really emotional, you'll notice it's slowly zooming in ever so slightly. And subconsciously, it just kind of draws you into like what's going on. So instead of having, I don't recommend just having still shots very long. Ooh, that's not even a still shot itself. Look at it. I actually started, zoomed in, I slowly move out. Ever so slightly. If you can't tell, pay attention to the sidewalk, okay? You can see I'm zooming out the entire time. That little bit of motion adds so much emotion to it. Now we're zooming in. Now we're zooming out. Now we're zooming out. Still zooming out. Zooming out. Zooming out. That's a pan. So in other words, same thing, Ken Burns, but you'll notice I started over here on the left side and it moves over to the right side. By the way, can I get some feedback? Are people actually understanding what the heck I'm talking about, or am I just talking way too fast? I want to make sure I'm not shooting through what this is. You gotcha? All right, cool. All right, cool. So let me know because I mumble a lot. I apologize. I want to make sure you guys understand it. So that little bit of motion adds so much. I didn't do that. You're probably, if you didn't realize I was using Ken Burns, you're thinking, well, how the heck did Tom hold the camera so still? Actually, it's just one shot, and it starts here, and it moves over. Of course, whenever you use the Ken Burns, you're actually zooming in a little bit. So by doing so, you're going to lose some of the quality. This is where 4K is really, really useful. Panning to the right. Zooming in. Still zooming in. Zooming out. So as you can see, it's an effect that I use all the time. There's always stuff in motion. One of my cliche trademarks is I always end with a drone shot. I don't know why. I just like it. So you'll see. I think there's something cool about showing that it's real. You'd be surprised how many people accuse me online of saying that's all CGI. It's not even real. It's all like whatever. So I do the drone shot. It kind of adds to so you can actually see what's going on. So you'll see what I mean. You can see this little tree that I did not fix. It looks like it has some error going on. I'll show you again. I was too cold at that time to actually fix the wire. Maybe next year, right? You can see the little street light over there. But just by doing, this is noise. So this is a fan. What's it called? DJI Aspire, which is their most expensive drone, if I'm not mistaken. Look at all the noise. See all those dots? Compare it to this. No dots, no noise. Tons of noise. The best drone camera, or not best in the world, I mean, there's better in the world, but it's still like a $3,000 drone. Even though it's like, this big of a camera, much bigger than a typical, like, what are they called, Phantoms or whatever, or DJI. Even those will have significantly less quality. This is a 4K camera than a real lens. This lens right here is, I'll show it to you. I brought my camera bag up here so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. This is actually a cheap lens. This was only like $200-300. In the lens world, that is cheap, just for clarification. Rockinon. And you can see, well, actually, you probably can't see it. This lens goes from, the lowest f-stop is 2.8. Not too bad, actually. That means it can actually have it pretty wide, but of course, it can make a shallow depth of field. It goes up to 22. And it can go as far as, I'm looking, I don't see what it is, but I think this one's about like 18, what's it called? 18 millimeters, which in other words is super, super wide. This doesn't look like it's on an 18 millimeter setting. From looking at that, it's probably around 20 something. 18 is going to have like a fisheye look. This lens right here, that is a typical 35 millimeter. That is this one right here. Sony Carl Zeiss glass. Pretty common lens. If this is what a 55 millimeter looks like, which means it's a little bit more of a zoom lens. This has the f-stop all the way down to 1.8. That's really, really low. 1.4 is the lowest I got personally, and typically a 1.4 lens might be $1,000. Not really needed for the most of you. I have a camera question. Best time to video, avoiding cars. I actually close off the road regardless, technically illegally, but the cops are super for it because they understand that I'm actually doing it out of safety. I don't live on a road. I actually live on a court. So by closing it off, it's not that big deal. I actually hire a neighbor. Everyone knows my neighbor. So they're cool with it. He's a great kid. And then now people who live there, he lets in, but the people who are just like, hi, and I mean that literally. I mean, if you see my display in person, you see these beams right here. This is not an effect. That's really what it looks like. These beams of light go for about 8 miles in each direction. So who follows lights in the middle of the night? People who are high. They're like, hey, look at the light in the sky. Let's see where it comes from. They come over, they're higher out of their mind. So he can keep those people off while the people who actually live there, they'll drive up and they'll turn off their headlights, etc. So I don't actually videotape in the middle of the night anymore. I used to do 2 a.m., but the problem is I got too many high people. So actually now I usually videotape around 9, 10 p.m. And I just close off the road so I don't have to worry about lights or headlights, etc. Someone sent me an email or a Facebook message, something like that, asking how do I time the audio. The audio I put in post-production. I don't even bother recording audio during the actual filming. I just line up the audio with something I know lines up. So obviously if you're programming your show, at this exact moment, like, so for example, at the moment the lights turn on, which is right, I'm dragging it just really slowly. Oh, it looks like it's this exact frame right here. At that exact moment that's the first lights that come on. Oh no, wait. Oh, there it is. I guess I started slightly prior, and where the beams come on, it's like right where the music and audio starts. Okay. So you find a moment that like, for example, right where this light, oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. Here, that light turns on. That's the, I know it's right there. It's just right there. So you find a point that you already know. Don't bother. Well, actually, I'm sorry. You can, but the truth is, if you record your audio and you're using that as a reference in real life to add your audio track later, even though sound is fast, the speed of sound is still delayed. So you might be 1/10 of a second off. That's really too much time. If you think about it, the speed of sound is like about 700 miles per hour. And the way that your mind subconsciously differentiates, oh, sorry, Catherine, I didn't mean to make you a liar. I didn't make a liar out of you. Your lies make a liar out of you. I'm just kidding. I love you. When sound hits this ear and then it hits this ear, your brain differentiates that. And think about it, something moving 700 miles per hour, your brain can tell that it's coming from this side versus this side, partly from which ear hears it first, and partly from reflections and the way that your ears are shaped. Won't get into all that. Your brain can actually differentiate how fast that is. The reason why I mentioned why that's super important is if your video is 1/10 of a second off, your brain doesn't even connect it's the same thing anymore. Your eyes might consciously connect, oh, I see what he's doing. He's trying to make that snowflake light up when I heard that thing. If it's right on, your brain will know it subconsciously. Right on really has to be like, a 20th of a second or better. This is why it kind of sucks, but most of the time when you upload videos, you probably know this, and I'm ashamed of it, on Facebook and YouTube because of the compression and delays with audio on people's phone speakers. They're not usually timed that well. So that little delay will probably frustrate you like crazy because it's not going to line up. There's nothing you can really do about that. Release on your computer, try to make it as precise as possible, knowing it's going to get screwed up by Facebook and YouTube's algorithms for compression, and also people's problems with, their phone delays, because it's getting processed audio and video not at the same time. There's usually a few milliseconds are off. So anyways, I'm talking too much about something that's not important. Typically in a project, I'll have below this all the different videos. I'll line them all up and I'll fix it later. Let's see if I have, I don't even know what these are.
So, Tom, before you do that, can I just ask on the Ken Burns effect?
Yes.
Is there any rules of thumb as to when you should zoom in or when you should zoom out, and how often should you use this effect in a video? Are there any general thoughts or tips in using it?
Yes. I'm trying to give an answer that is helpful, because it's one of those things, to me, I already know looking at a shot if I want it zoomed in or panning to the left, and I'm trying to see if I can vocalize what's going through my mind. As you zoom in, there's a moment of release, and as you pull in, you are increasing focus. I know, like, well, yeah, duh. But the thing is, as you increase focus, people will subconsciously be drawn towards what you're focusing on. So if that's what you want, like, so for example, when I'm focusing from left to right specifically, which I don't do very often, what was it? There it is. I want people to pay attention to the trees and the candy canes. And that's why I'm pulling the focus towards it, and I'm moving in line with that. See, if I was zooming in on the mega tree over here, people would be subconsciously looking at the mega tree. So look, I want people to hear the bum, ba-da, bum, ba-da, bum, ba-da, bum, ba-da, bum. Here, here, here. I want people to actually hear that, connect. Oh, that's what's going on. And then when you zoom out, for example, I'm drawing away focus, and I'm thinking about the completeness, the perspective of the environment as it fits into everything else. So that kind of gives you overall perspective. Whenever this one has no zoom, probably the only non-Ken Burns effect, because it has so much going on. I didn't want to move at all. I just kind of want people to be like, what's going on? But typically, like, if you notice I'm zooming in, it's drawing focus somewhere in this area. You're not going to look over here when I'm zooming in. You're getting drawn in this way, because that's what the camera's telling you to do subconsciously. So basically, I kind of like, do I want people drawing in, or do I want them fading away? And depending on it, so it's not a precise rule of thumb. As much rules as I give, you're going to have rules that break it. But wherever you're moving, the brain will subconsciously go that direction. So you're basically, by the movement, you're telling the person where to focus. So only your sequencing can determine where you want the focus to be, and the Ken Burns effect should reflect that. I hope that was helpful. Actually, I think I went over oh no, I didn't go over color grading. So here's my shot with everything on. Let me go to my color board. Every program has a different way of doing this. So if you look at my saturation, look how high that is. This is what it actually looked like. This is actually not bad. And this is what I put it at. They go back and forth. This is at what the camera actually recorded. And that is my oversaturation. I mean, look. Now, by the way, this only works if you have a good camera. Otherwise, this would just add crazy amounts of noise. But you can see that actually just looks like super cool. And and I can't take credit for that. That's the camera. I mean, look at this. Look at the glow on, and that's actually what it really looks like. And that's what your eye sees. But cameras have a terrible problem recording light. So if you just use the average settings, it's going to lose all that contrast. Question was, how long do you use a Ken Burns effect? I usually use it continuously between each clip. Now, since my clips are only like 3 to 6 seconds long, it's an ever so slight. You notice I'm not doing, I'll tell you what, let me do a terrible Ken Burns effect. So this has no Ken Burns effect. So I'm going to add one. By default, that's a lot of movement. Let's see what it looks like under default. By the way, it's rendering that. In other words, it hasn't had time to even think about what that is. Can I show them? Hit done. So it hasn't rendered it. Let me give it a second to render. I can't move the mouse. It's waiting for a sub. There it goes. Rendering, almost done. Wait for it. This is why a fast computer is so critical. This is a slow computer, by the way, or it's old. So now we play it again. Here's a terrible Ken Burns effect. Not actually, that's not even that terrible, but it's too big for my taste. It's too obvious. We're zooming out. Where I like to use more subtle, like so slow that they don't even know what's happening. But it's kind of like music during a movie. You're not, unless it's Star Wars, you're typically not aware of the soundtrack, but the music tells you how to feel about what you're seeing. If you have the movement so fast that people are aware that it's moving, you lost the subliminal effect and now it becomes a conscious effect. You don't want people to know why they're feeling the emotions. You would just want them to feel it. It's a general rule of thumb I like to use. What percentage intensity do you run your lights at during filming? Me personally, between, I don't know, 40 is the highest I think I usually do. I don't know. I've once done I have 70, but I regretted it. So somewhere between 40 and 70 is actually what I usually record at. But truth be told, you have to remember, everything depends on your camera settings. So if I said, oh, run at 70%, it's going to work. Well, 70%, if your camera, if you have too much if your aperture is too big, it's going to get washed out into white. If all your lights look white, it means you're getting washed out. What that means is you have too much light entering in. One thing I did not mention, I should have mentioned, is your shutter speed. So for example, I typically use like a 1/60th or faster. If I use 1/30th, which means it's basically the shutter's open for a second, it's going to become kind of blurry. It's not going to look crisp. This was probably 1/80th or 1/60th at the slowest, because since there's 60 frames per second, it would be impossible to hold the shutter for longer than a 60th of a second, since every 60th of a second is a new picture. But if it looks washed out, try reducing your shutter speed. So in other words, make the bottom number bigger, 1/60th, 1/80th, 1/120th, until it looks right, if it's getting washed out. But of course, whenever you do that, you're also increasing the chance of noise. So again, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a good camera. And you don't have to even own it. Just go borrow. Find someone who has a good camera, like a Canon or a Nikon or a Sony. I don't mean like $200 point and click. I mean, I'm talking about, like one that's significant. This is actually a mirrorless camera, which is why it's so small. It's just, you mostly just see the body. This camera, so there's no mirror in it. Most a DSLR, by definition, has a mirror in it. This one doesn't use a mirror. So basically the lens goes right into the crystal element that records the data. It's okay if you don't know what I'm talking about. You don't need to. That's not really important information. When my Canon 7D has good IQ, but poor low light sensitivity. Any other tips for shooting to get the lowest amount of noise possible? I actually don't know what IQ is, so I apologize for my ignorance. That's ironic. I don't know what IQ is. I don't know what IQ is when it comes to cameras. But regardless of low light sensitivity, the way you compensate for low light sensitivity is you lower your f-stop. So in other words, if you're using a 8.0 f-stop, go to a 4.0, go to a 3.0. But realize if you get too too low of a number, your depth of field is going to decrease. So basically, or you can increase your shutter speed. If let's say you're doing 120th, go to 160th. If you still can't fix it, then you're probably just recording with the wrong camera. But those are ways you can kind of compensate for getting less noise, because ISO is your camera sensitivity to it. And if it's just, if the crystal that's recording the data is just not sensitive enough to that light, there's nothing you can do to fix it really post. Like there's not, using like a noise remover in post-production is not going to do that much. Lowering your shutter speed, lowering your f-stop number, which increases your aperture, would be ways to do it, but then you'll have other problems as well. But try to find the balance between that. How about a GoPro? GoPro cameras will not be, I haven't used the most recent one, but I've used every other GoPro. I personally don't think they're good enough because of the noise issue. Also, you have to keep in mind, a GoPro lens is this big, right? So it's going to let in that much light. If you look at this, look how big that lens is. It's going to let in that much light. That's it. That's the difference between noise and not noise. The bigger the lens, well, you're physically letting in more light. So of course your camera crystal is going to do better with that. But if you use a small lens, I mean, there's just nothing you can do, because then all the light has to travel through this much glass to get to your crystal. So sorry if that's not super helpful, but yeah, I would say it's IQ is image quality. Oh, I never knew that acronym. So thank you for that. Any other questions?
Do you have any suggestions on using your iPhone or a smartphone? Any settings suggestions? And the same thing with a drone, and any tips on when you should zoom out, or any how to fly it, or any suggestions?
Sure. Okay. So regarding your iPhone, usually there is third-party apps that allow you to control your settings. iPhone, Galaxy, they're brilliant because they make it so the average person to get good video. Sadly, what I'm teaching you, for some of you, will probably make your videos worse if you don't actually really spend enough time to screw with it. So in other words, I'm only teaching you enough to be dangerous until you take these tools and actually use them. But assuming you actually spend time going back and forth, record it, test it, record it, test it, record it, test it, until you find settings that actually look good. And you can't just use your phone to test it. You have to go back to your computer, zoom in, and actually look at the quality. Assuming you do all that work, get a third-party app that allows you to control your ISO separately. It allows you to control your aperture separately. By default, iPhone's camera and Galaxy's cameras will not let you, if I'm not mistaken, change that. But if you go into a third-party app, I had one, I don't have to even show you, it's called like Camera Plus or something, and it let me manually change those settings. And then also making sure you use the same settings from shot to shot to shot to shot. I know some people prefer to film when it's at dusk because there's less contrast. For me, since I like to do so many different shots, it's not practical because I can't have one shot with, at 6 p.m., another shot at 6:15, 6:30, etc., where clearly the background light is changing, even though that's reasonable for us to understand. The average person is going to think the video's fake, or they're not going to really tie it as a single event. So I recommend, if you're going to do multiple shots, just wait till it's completely dark and do all your shots then. But like I said, if you're using your phone, use a third-party app to separate those the ISO, aperture, or f-stop settings. There's typically cameras don't have a physical zoom. In other words, they often have a digital zoom. Don't use digital zoom. Digital zoom just means you're ripping off the quality. The digital zoom is you're taking the image and digitally zooming in. You're actually just losing information. If you're doing a digital zoom, just do it in post-production if you're even going to do it at all. If it's a physical zoom where the lens is actually physically changing shape and space in between, then yeah, go ahead and use it. Most phones don't have enough space for that, or if it is, it's a small amount. So don't zoom in. Just get your phone. Oh, by the way, I didn't say this, but I think it's common sense. Use a tripod. They even make them for phones. Otherwise, that little bit of shake is going to cause so much problems. How do you mix in? Oh wait, I have a 17 to 55 millimeter 2.8 lens. Should I stay at 20 millimeters or above to avoid fisheye? You'll actually know, and I hope this isn't a smart remark. When you look inside of it, and you look in your camera at the 20 millimeters, it won't look too bad. Just use your eyes as judgment. If it's making the outside like clearly too weird, like the fisheye look, then just pull it in a little bit. Since you actually have a zoom lens, just adjust it until it feels right. By the way, the 17 to 55 millimeter to a 2.8 lens, that sounds like a completely perfect lens for an application like this, because 17 is super wide, 55 is plenty of zoom for the average person. 2.8, you'll probably never go that low anyways. Maybe you might go that low, but typically lower than 4, you might get too shallow depth of a field. So 2.8 would be great. By great, I mean you'll never need to go more than that. So that's a really good lens, by the way. So use your judgment, because sometimes you might even have a fisheye effect, but if it's all in darkness, who cares, right? If everything else that is actually supposed to be in view. Like over here on my screen, that's dark. That's dark. So if there's a little bit of fisheye there, you wouldn't even know. So it's not even necessarily an issue. How do you mix in different views to all line up to the song in your video? What I do is I actually take all my videos and I line them up. This is not a good example. Well, let me try opening a different library.
So, Tom, your camera's frozen, just so you know. Your image.
Oh, it is? Oh, it looks like I'm holding a football or something. How do I fix that? Thanks for pointing that out, Ed. Do you happen to know how to fix that? Well, actually, no, I guess it doesn't really matter. Who cares if you can see me or not? I'm not that interesting. Let me open a different library. I don't know what this is going to show me. Update. Oh, you suck at life. Sorry. Okay, that's not too bad. I don't know what is in this video library, so I apologize. Oh, no. I hate when they do that. It says 0, 8 to 38. Okay. Oh, wait, it's a Mac. Any other questions while I wait for this to update?
Drone settings or what you should do with the drone?
Oh, yeah. Drone settings. Same thing. The drone is a real life Ken Burns. So in other words, you just have to be aware of what shot you want ahead of time. I don't use a ton of drone footage because it's so much lower in quality than my Sony camera. But when I have used it in the past to get a moving video, I would have to actually plan out, okay, I want this shot to go from left to right, I want this from right to left. And I would have to, of course, record it in multiple takes, probably like at least 5 different takes of the same process, because my timing is going to usually be pretty off. I'm going to state the obvious. Please don't just get stuck looking at your phone when you're filming a drone. Otherwise, you'll crash into something. But basically, you just got to think about the Ken Burns effect. Where do you want your focus to be? And then actually fly your drone in that position. Also, drones, just like a boat, it takes a second to get the direction you want. So you usually have to change the direction a couple seconds prior before you want the direction to actually happen. And honestly, anyone who runs a drone, your skills will determine everything. I don't think there's much I can say in regard to that. Light shows? No, that's not it. I don't even know where this stuff is. I don't know where my other videos are. I apologize. But basically what I would do is, sorry, I would take all my videos and I would line them up. I'll just do it right now. How about that? So I would take this shot right here, and wait, that's not even the right project. There we go. That looks more like it. So I'll have, I cut this up like crazy. This is what it looks like when I'm actually editing. And at first I line up all my videos. I drag and drop all my video files until they all line up perfectly with the audio. And then once they're all continuous, I start taking my blade tool. Let me turn off this audio scrubbing so it doesn't. Okay. There we go. Oh, I hit the wrong one. There we go. I'll go through and say, right here, I really want this clip right here. I want this shot right here from about here to here, and I'll cut it, and then I'll take that, and I'll move it up. As you go up in your timeline, that becomes now the element that I see. This is what the working file actually looks like. At the end, I delete all the ones that are not being used, so it ends up looking like this. So it's much cleaner and easier for my computer to handle all the data. But during the actual editing process, I'll have all my video lined up on top of each other. And I just, like I said, I take a moment that I know, right? I know the lights all come on this beat, and I take the video and I drag it till it lines up perfectly within a 60th of a frame, which is the lowest resolution or the highest resolution I can do. And then I go from there. Hopefully that's a little bit of helpful and that answers your question. Sometimes the bow or the bow is actually wanted, not often, but sometimes. Got it.
So for curiosity, Tom, how many times do you film a video? You know, do you do it 5 times or a couple hours, or, you know, for every song, how long does it take?
I'm sad to say this video I filmed when Tony Paradowski was over. So I was spending time with him as much as possible. It's not sad that I was spending time with him, but for those of you who know Tony, know he passed away maybe like a month or 2 ago. So I actually wanted to film this as fast as possible. So this was in a record amount of takes. I probably did only like 10 takes, which is, I never do that. I think it's because now I actually have a little bit of experience. Last year's video, I think I shot, sadly, 45 takes of the same song. So if I have like, you know, a 5-minute piece, do the math. You know, I shot that 45 times, in addition to having to, you know, wait out the song to repeat while I adjust the camera. So in a way, it's almost like 90 times 5, which is 450 minutes, which, yeah, that's a lot of hours. And then going through that footage. So I'm picky. I'd rather have that perfect shot. If you get your focus perfect and you already know you have your settings right, I typically will have at least 5 shots that are good that I'm choosing between. If I have only 2 shots, I'm really, really limited. But again, you want to have your main shot. You want to have your far shot. You want to have an angle shot. You want to have a moving shot. You want to have any shot that features a particular element. That's already 5 shots right there. If I have 3 elements I want, that's now a total of 7 shots. Now, let's say I want to show the piano, like really, really close. Like, let me get the blade so you can see that. Like, let's say I want to show you the piano notes. Well, I never ended up using this shot right here. It's a cool shot. But if you wanted to see the notes in particular and see like what it actually looks like when it's getting played, then you can actually see from this shot. But I never decided to actually use that shot. So I think also because no complaints. It's a little bit more noisy on that shot. You can see over there compared to like that shot right there. Hopefully that's helpful. Any other questions?
So the floor is open if anyone wants to ask Tom any questions.
Do you play the complete song on every shot? No. If I know I just want the guitar on one moment, then I'm just going to record that moment over and over and over. So there's no point. Because I already know how I'm going to edit it later. If you don't know how you're going to edit it later, yeah, you got to do the complete. But if it's just one moment, I want to, like, for example, I zoom in on a face because that face is going to talk for 3 seconds and never turns on again. Well, then just record that one shot during that time. Otherwise, you don't need to record the whole shot. Any other questions? I'm trying to not go as long. Last time I did like a 3-hour lecture. Do you turn on all your lights static to focus your camera? There's nothing wrong with that. I haven't last year, but that's actually a good idea. I've done that a couple of years ago. that's a good tool. So you definitely can do that. I didn't last year, but that's because I think I had so many lights on during the sequence I didn't need to. Sorry, Tom, did you see my question earlier? No, I didn't, Ryan. Sorry. Ryan Marshall. When you're done, can you show your controller layout and where they all are? What do you mean physically where they are, or I wasn't sure. I can show you where I have some of them. Yeah, I can do a walkthrough, but I have to switch to my phone. So let me do that later if that's okay. How did you mount those stars on your roof? By stars, I'm assuming you mean this. I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. I mean, those are actually snowflakes. Okay, let me see if I can show a shot that shows it better. Okay, so if you look closely to the snowflake, there is actually a metal pipe conduit that is bent at a little bit more than 90-degree angle to compensate for the slope and attached using a conduit attachment to the wood. I actually have these outside. I can show you when I switch. And then, yeah, and what's his name? James from Boscoio. I think I asked him specifically to put the conduit mounts on these so I can just zip tie them on there. And then I use conduit attached to wood. And then the wood has, I can't show you actually you can see this because of my mouse. Oh, whoops. What do I do? This is why I can't have nice things. Okay. If you look right here, that's actually a sandbag on top of a little piece of wood that's going across. And that's the metal conduit right there. The conduit attaches to the wood, sandbag is holding it. And I use two 60-pound bags on each of these. And because it's made out of wood and it's painted, it kind of gripped the concrete tiles. So there's nothing physically attached to the roof, just resting on it. And I have about 70-mile-per-hour winds, literally. And these were 100% fine. If the wind gets too powerful, since the conduit goes right in the middle, the worst thing that can happen is the snowflake twists. And then I just go twist it back after the windstorm. Let's see here. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Any final questions?
Otherwise, I'll switch to my phone pretty soon where I can
Okay.
walk through.
What drone do you use?
I have a Phantom, but I did not use the Phantom on this one. I used the DJI Inspire, whatever one, because my friend Matt, who is a really good friend of mine, he has one, and he's like, hey, you want to record it? I'm like, sure, why not? And he's probably a better pilot than I am. So I always like to work with people when I can. So he recorded it using his drone. All the other videos I've done, I use my Phantom. They're both good. I mean, if you use anything by DJI, they are so easy to fly. I highly recommend them. But again, their camera will never compare to a DSLR or a mirrorless body. There's just no comparison for quality. And you can see it. Like I said, the Inspire, which is the best camera they make, look how noisy this shot is compared to this shot. No noise, tons of noise. So even their $3,000 drone is no match for a typical body. So if you can use a regular camera, use the drone shot sparingly. But anything by DJI, the Mavic, the Phantom 4, the Inspire, they're all phenomenal. It sounds like you recommend going straight out of the video with no intro image. Everyone has their own thing. I try not to make my videos look like commercials. I just go right into it. I think the average person is not interested in a commercial. In other words, they already get so many Facebook ads and YouTube ads. Last thing you want to see is like, okay, great. They would have been staying long enough to watch it. So I literally don't use I just go right into the good stuff. Otherwise, the average person, I think, just skips right past it. Do I know of any free or very cheap software that will give multiple views like you're using? Yeah, DaVinci Resolve is free. They have a free version of it. Only ones I can find are a single edit view to edit. Actually, iMovie has multiple shots. DaVinci Resolve has multiple shots. And Resolve is for PC and Mac. So, yeah, those will definitely have it. Maybe you're just watching examples of them not using it. But, yeah.
Have you ever used Vegas
Vegas. I haven't used it. I've seen good things about it. It's not the highest end software program, but it does have all the features you will need.
Occasionally, there's a company that gives away Vegas Pro 14 for free if you keep your eye out for it. Some people actually occasionally will post it on one of the forums, but when they're giving away Vegas Pro 14, you can get that and then spend about $100 and upgrade it to 15 or better. And
Nice.
That's about as cheap a paid multi-track editor you can find.
Yeah, that's actually that's good advice. Brian Weber, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, has a good idea. Since Adobe now uses subscriptions, you could just use it for the month for $25 and then get rid of it. Which if you're like me, if you only watch, that's not true. I do stuff for my church. But if you do most of your video editing just for lights, you might as well just rent it for that month. Assuming you can, study it real quick. Silly question, but where did you purchase your spotlights? I actually sell those spotlights. I went back and forth forever trying to work with different manufacturers to get them to make something that's good enough quality that would be able to move fast enough. So I found this one company I worked with, spec'd out what I wanted, told them how many motors I want on the X and Y axes, etc. So I can determine the speed of them, worked with them to get the glass just right. The glass is super, super important. In other words, a lens, just like a laser. I mean, a laser is, if you have a 1 watt laser, you're going to see that thing for miles. It's only 1 watt though. Well, because a lens, and basically the way that it works, it's so focused, right? So if you have a spotlight that's extremely focused, that's going to matter a lot. So you can't just pay attention like, if you go to like China, not if you don't go to China. If you look online, like AliExpress, Alibaba, etc., you see all these things that say 230 watt, 350 watt, 400 watt bulbs. And it doesn't matter if the lens isn't good. It has to have a really good lens on it. So the combination of a lens, a good bulb, of course, and the motors, which create the movements. Trust me, I've seen people buy some of these ones from China, like the $200 ones. But the reason why they're $200 is because they actually move so slow that they don't get the effects that you probably want. If you're trying to get an effect like me, you need to have something with fast motors. I'm not trying to sell myself. If you're interested, write me individually or just go to the Magical Light shows. You can see the ones that I sell, but I don't want this to be a commercial by any means. Any problems with FAA? Not problems with them. I use common sense. If you're by an airport, it doesn't mean you can't do it. You just can't flash. You can't put these beams horizontally so they would hit the cockpits. So, for example, if you hit an airplane and you hit the underbelly of it, you're not going to blind anyone. It's not going to be an issue. If you hit the cockpit sideways as they're approaching, to land or to take off, although they're not going to crash all of a sudden by seeing a light, the worst thing they can report you if you bother them enough. They're used to it to a small amount. So, for example, like these lights I use only a couple 100 watts. If you go to like a grand opening of a center, some of those lights are 4,000 watts, and they don't even get permits when they run those suckers. So as long as it's not intentional, lasers are a problem because they're almost a 0-degree dispersion. So it's tiny when they start the laser, and it's tiny up in the sky. By the time the beam gets up to the sky, from our perspective, it still looks small, but that's because it's going farther away. But from a plane's perspective, that light is probably half the size of a football field when it's a mile up in the air. So it's not going to be blinding them. It's just going to look like, oh, there's someone with the light on. It's not like the plane is going to crash immediately by seeing a bright light on the ground. So I don't have problems with the FAA. I got all my tips from an FAA traffic instructor who actually went to my church when I started filming this, and he's the one who told me, like, hey, do this, don't do this. So even if you're next to an airport, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Just do not shine a light sideways right where the airplanes would land, because if you hit their cockpit, that'd probably piss them off. But if you hit the underbelly of a plane 2 miles up, 3 miles up, 5 miles up, it's not going to bother them. Do you have issues with air traffic like planes? That's what the FAA question was. Same question. Any other questions?
So, Tom, I've got one final question for you. There's been a lot of posts lately about YouTube or some of the other ones taking down videos because of the music that folks are playing.
Oh, really?
Tips on, I guess you probably don't have the issue because they're monetizing it, but, I don't know if you're aware of it or you've got any tips on how people can get around those rules.
Interesting. Truth be told, this is my speculation on the spot. So this is not a prepared answer, so I apologize if this is incorrect information. The way I view it is, this has been my experience. If you create something great, most of the time they're happy about it because you are actually adding to what they have. Now, if you make something mediocre to the point where the reason why people are watching is mostly because they're trying to listen to the music, then you're actually taking it away. And I say that because Disney, who is one of the strictest companies I know when it comes to their copyright stuff, have never even complained at all about me using their stuff. And I have got hundreds, and I don't mean this in a boasting way, but I've on Facebook, I've had some of my stuff use hundreds of millions. That's an exaggeration. I think maybe like 70 million is like probably the most individual videos and that's Disney owned. And they did not complain. They actually really liked the video and they gave me a tour of the facility. Other groups, they like it because like, hey, you're drawing, more attention to their music. They're making money. You're making money. It's a win-win situation. I think if you make something look really, really bad, or if it's like a lyric video, for example, where you're trying to basically steal a view, no company is happy with that. So even though I use all copyrighted music, I haven't had any problems with it personally, but I think it's because they actually like the stuff that I'm doing. So I think if you make something really, really good, they're going to be happy about it. But if you're just trying to steal or get people to watch your video because of the music, that's different. I think the video has to be the draw. And if the music's an afterthought or a secondary, then it's a good thing. But if the music is the draw and the video is secondary, that's when you're taking advantage of it. That has been my personal experience, and I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for the presentation.
The xLights project exists because of people like you. Help continue the project by making a donation today at xlights.org/donate.